else. Let me start the presentation also. So all these days, we have learned JavaScript, correct? We have been doing JavaScript. We have learned a lot of concepts with respect to JavaScript, right? So be it like creating variables, basic syntax, data types, functions, what else? So we also understood how to debug JavaScript programs. Yeah. So after that, we have learned what is called objects. We understood how they are different from primitives, so basics of objects, and then different syntax around objects. So then we have understood the different methods of primitives. Yeah, primitive data types, numbers, strings. We also learned arrays and array methods, right? So with this, now let's move on to understanding a bigger picture, and then we'll see, okay, how this is simplified, how it is done. So in web, so any web page we create, right, are generally for creating any front-end application, we say we need HTML, we need JavaScript, and also CSS. So each one has a purpose, right? HTML will actually create the view, yeah, the UI part of it. CSS will decorate that UI, correct? CSS will decorate it, meaning so whatever buttons I've added, it is going to add some style. Yeah, it is going to add some color to it. If everything is looking black and white, so it will add some color. What does JS do then? So these two we already know. So what is the purpose of JS? Where did we use actually in web page? So far, in terms of syntax, we have only understood, okay, what is there in JavaScript. We have not so far understood how it is actually related to front end, correct? As a language, we have learned the core concepts of a language, just like any other language, like C language. But so far, we did not understand how this is related to this stack. In order to make any front end application, yeah, or any website, we say these are the core technologies. But how these three are working together, or what is the role of JavaScript? Anybody knows what is the role of JavaScript? Why do we use JavaScript?
So it gives the logic background, like that, in for the front end.
Okay, you can add logic. Okay, any other thing? I mean, any other answer?
in order to make web pages interactive.
Okay, so let me write down logic, interactive. Then,
Validation purpose.
okay, so we use it for validation. Validation, as in like if user is submitting a form, before submitting a form, he has missed a field. Some field is required, some field is optional. So we have seen there is an HTML validation, but then yes, it is also possible to validate using JavaScript. Okay, any other reason? Yeah,
Calculations.
maybe I'll add it under logic only. Yeah, I'll add that calculation part under logic. So one other main usage which I can see actually, you know, or which is JavaScript is so popular. That is why we're actually, concentrating more on JavaScript, or we have to know more of JavaScript is it is also to build the UI. What is the meaning of build the UI? HTML is already there, correct? I told the purpose or role of HTML is to, the make the UI page. But then the problem with that HTML, which is, it is kind of or with HTML is it is not a dynamic HTML, or it is not a dynamic, it will not be able to do any dynamic content in it. You put something in your HTML file, you render it, that is what it is. Correct? Yes, I can add to that displayed HTML, I can add interactivity, that is fine. But this will only add interactivity to the existing, page or the content. So what do you mean by dynamic content? Yeah. So, so let's say take a simple example of you have seen, what is called as show more, which means imagine like you'll have a button like this, so it will have one collapsing and opening. See this? Assume this is, I mean, this kind of toggling effect. You see now the content is you got totally a different content, correct? Yeah, or hidden now. Yeah. So so yeah, HTML will not be able to do it. HTML as a language is just a pure markup language. You have some content, you have some text, you have some images, you want to display something, you can actually do it with your HTML. Yes, on top of that you can style it. But JS, more than writing a logic, yes, we can use arrays, we can use objects, yeah, we can store the data, right? With the JS, I can store the data on the client side. I can have some uh, kind of client side memory. So something I have to, hold it. But more than that, the usage is for displaying a content based on, the context. I don't want to display everything. If you are logged in only, then I'll show this option like share and library. If you're not logged in, not required, right? Yeah, I don't have to show you all of this. Huh? So this is an again another example of like dynamic content. Okay. So in order to have the dynamic content, you yeah, so that's what meaning like building the UI. So so what do? We rely on what is called as JavaScript. So what is the meaning of we rely on JavaScript for dynamic content? So apart from the core language as a concept that we have learned so far, okay, it has a support for what is called as DOM, which is nothing but the document object model. So how is it supporting? So as a JavaScript, okay, so browsers will give you the capability to manipulate this DOM, to create this DOM, to build that DOM purely using JavaScript. So JavaScript provides, the browser provides a lot of functions, yeah, or a lot of methods, we should say, yeah, to work with this DOM model which is displayed. So what exactly is a DOM? It's a tree-like structure. You render some HTML page and you go on inspecting in the browser console. You will see a tree, correct? The tree which says like what all the nodes which are displayed. Okay. So let's say if this is DOM, which is nothing but document object model. Now let's me inspect it. And I'll show you. We will be able to get in the browser console itself. We can see. So what is HTML behind this? And here this representation we call it like a DOM representation or also called as DOM tree. Yeah. So every HTML, everything that you display it on a browser. Okay. So behind the scene, it is actually created as a document object model. Okay. Yeah. So this is how it looks like to see. Yeah. You have a root node called document or a doc type. It's actually a document. Yeah. So but this talks about doc type. So under the document, you got what is called as HTML. Underneath HTML, you have so many uh, child elements like head and body. Again, these elements have nested elements like H2. But this is how HTML looks like. But how is it different from, you know, a DOM? Oh, okay, what I'm showing you is an HTML code. But how do you say this as a DOM? Now each of these elements which are actually displayed, okay, so browser, the way browser is actually, holding them, yeah, for you to view, you're displaying an HTML. So it is maintaining it like its own internal representation, okay, that representation itself is actually DOM, document object model. What it means? It means every element you see here is actually created as an object. You display a button on this HTML page. Yeah, you go and add an HTML button. So what it does, browser will create an object for it. What does it do? Browser will create an object for it. And how do okay, how does that object looks like? Let's say a browser has created. Can I access that object? Yes, you can access that object. How? Because browser has given you APIs. Okay, browser has given you APIs to see that. How do we get it? So document dot query selector, yeah, and then I'll say button. See, now I got the reference of that particular object. I told you, though I write in HTML as a button, it gets internally in the browser represented as an object, and now through this method I was able to get the reference of that object, which means I can store that object into a variable. Correct, I can store that into a variable. Let's say, so we use const button, so we know how to create objects. Correct, now I am getting a reference of an existing object which is stored within the browser. Now let's see what is that object holds. So let's say if I say dot, see what all I am going to get it. These are all the different properties. So what does an object contains? As you have learned, object will have properties as well as methods. Methods are nothing but the JavaScript functions. Correct, so it has properties. For example, inner HTML, inner text, yeah, it has also something called as value to get the value attribute. Yeah, I can also get the style of this, whatever style you have applied using style. So there is no style which I have added to this. So let's say I put a style. Yeah, I put some style to this. That gets automatically updated into this object because that's how the browser is actually, representing this element. So it re-rendered. I'll have to get the reference once again. I'm going to get the button dot style. If you see somewhere color, so we will see the color also which was set. So it will have a value of the blue which I've set here. Okay, so not visible here. Yeah, I see it is not updated. Okay, it should have got. Okay, interesting why it is not updated, but for sure it is going to update this object. Okay, for now you keep it like this is that object, this is how it looks like in an HTML representation. So this object is being updated. I think we are getting a different button, that's why I think it's not. Yeah, so we are holding a different reference now. You see button dot inner HTML. If I check, see it is having it pointing to a different object. But the point I'm trying to tell here is, yeah, so we have a DOM. Yeah, that's the internal representation of the entire UI which is there. Now through the DOM APIs, yeah, so through the, we call it like DOM APIs or the DOM methods. Okay, so through the DOM, okay, APIs which are actually a JavaScript APIs. Yeah, these are all JavaScript based API, which means they're pure JavaScript through which we can actually interact with the entire the document object model which is displayed over here. Whatever you display it in this white space, that can be handled, that can be kind of manipulated using the APIs of DOM, or the DOM related APIs which each and every browser is giving. Now, why I'm saying each and every browser, I'm not saying JavaScript. Yes, because this is not part of the JavaScript specification, the DOM. Okay, so the document object model is actually not part of JavaScript. It is part of the browser. So browsers are actually giving you those APIs, but those APIs happens to be JavaScript because behind the browser we have got JavaScript support, JavaScript via JavaScript engine, and that's why these APIs will only work if I am running this JavaScript in a browser. Now, if you remember the other day, we have seen how to work with JavaScript using Node, correct? Using the Node interpreter, we were able to execute programs. Remember? Yeah. So I can actually write JavaScript here also. So this is a pure JavaScript, and here this JavaScript will not support any of this DOM. That's why I explicitly stated, okay, these are actually these methods or these APIs are given by the browser itself, which means these APIs you can only access if it is in a browser environment, if you're running JavaScript in a browser environment. Fine, all that is good. So let's say if at all I would like to, okay, see how does that manipulation looks like, how does, how do I interact with this particular DOM which is already displayed, and how JavaScript can help me build dynamic content. Why all this discussion came? The discussion came, JavaScript has a superpower of creating a dynamic content, which is not possible using HTML and CSS. So browsers given a gateway to JavaScript to intercept that existing view which is displayed, or to build on top of that view which is already created. Now, if I have to tell you, so what are those DOM APIs? How does they look like? Yes, just now we saw one API like to query the existing object. Yeah, query the existing object, which is nothing but document dot query selector. We write what is called as query selector, meaning we query the elements based on its selector. So this selector is purely a CSS selector. I'll have to write a pure CSS selector. Let's say if I am writing a style for this button, then it will be, I can use just this button, correct? In CSS, I can go on just writing a button selector. So through that name, I am selecting. That's how this method is created actually. Let's say no, I put some ID to this button, yeah, or some class name to this button. So let's say btn. That's a class name. Then how do I write my selector? I write dot btn. Now, yes, this method supports that syntax also. All it is expecting is a selector. So what is the selector you wrote? Dot btn. Okay, is it able to access? Let's see if I have written here properly. Yes, class is equal to button, and then yeah, it's there. So here I have to mention the dot also because that's a selector, right? Okay, so somehow since I'm in a, so let me show that clearly in in our own JavaScript. So let me come out of CodePen for now to show all these things. That will be easy because I think it's also too much confusing over there because we are running under CodePen. Yeah. Okay. Let's see this here. So I'll add a button also now here. Okay. So let me add a button. So for now I'll comment out this JavaScript which is not required for me. I'll add a button. So I'm saying, so we can add a class which is button, and this to this button, yeah, and to this button I can put something like submit. So now this button I would like to access it, I would like to read from JavaScript. How? The browser's DOM APIs have given a method called document dot query selector. In the document, yeah, you query using a selector. Now what is this document? This is the root node of the entire page which is displayed. You see, as in when I move over, it says this is what is document. Now using this method, I'm querying what is there in the document object. Alright, so query selector and then say dot btn. See what you got? This reference I got. How? Because as a name also it's saying that is the one. Now how did I get it? Using its query selector. Yeah, using its CSS selector. That's what is the input for this query selector. So likewise, this DOM, has given lot of methods actually. Query selector is one. Create element is one. I can create a new element actually. I don't have a, let's say I don't have a paragraph. I can create an element called paragraph. Using what? Using JavaScript. Okay, let me show you how do I create a paragraph and add it to that existing one. Okay, so let's say para. Now paragraph, if I just put p opening p, it doesn't have anything, correct? It is an empty element, correct? Now how do I do? I have to create some text. Again, for that, DOM has a method. Create a text node. Using what? So let's say lorem, or this is a dynamic paragraph from JS. What did I just create? I created a text node. Okay, so I'll just call it a text because I need a reference of that. Now I have a para which is p. I also have a text node which is having the text content. Now DOM also has a method to marry these two. How? Para dot append child. What is it? Append child, then text. Then what I got? So I got a, let's see what is there in para now. See now, after appending this text, now para has become this p now. Okay, yeah. You see, this is a very good way of creating, some HTML content without hard coding it here. Did I hard code paragraph here? No. Do I have it in here? No. When I'm able to create element like this. So for all the task related to this, yeah, creating an HTML, yeah. So the DOM APIs gives you a lot of properties as well as methods. Now let's say for this paragraph, I would like to set some class name. Yes, DOM has properties. I can put class name is equal to what? Okay, description. I would like to add a class called description. How? On this para as an object, we have to set this class name property. And then I'm giving a value. Now see what happens. Let me display what is there in the paragraph now. So now para, we added a class using this property called class name. Okay, everything is fine. But how do I display this in the existing page? That is also we have got a method. How? Document dot. Okay, so we can access the existing element or the body element like this. Meaning now I can get the whole body element reference. And this is also an object. Yes, if this is an object, since it is a DOM object, we have got methods like append child. Yeah, we again on this we have got methods like query selector. So likewise in every DOM object you will have all the DOM related methods which are available. Okay, now our task is now, okay, let's append or let's add this paragraph before this submit button. Okay, let's add this paragraph before the submit button. Let's see how we do that. Okay, so right now just imagine that we have created one dynamic element, and that element we are holding the reference in this variable called para. Yeah, so this is also called as like kind of document node. This is a node now. Fine. Now how do I do it? So for that, let me get a reference of button. How? So we have already seen how to get a reference of button, which is query selector using dot btn. And I have to store that reference, right? Otherwise I lose it. So button. Now, since I've got the reference of existing element which is there on the page, I can say, there are methods like insert before. And what is it asking? You have to give a node. So before button, I would like to insert something. What is that I want to insert? Tell me. I want to insert para. And now I told you para is actually a document node. Though it's an object. In JavaScript, I can deal with it as an object. It's actually a document node which is created. In that object, yeah, so we have a document node. Now let's see what happens with this. Okay, I think node and child. Okay, this method syntax is different. Yeah, it is also expecting a child. Okay, 1 second. Let's see if the syntax goes like button comma para. No. Okay, failed to execute the node because new child element contains the parent. Okay, so fine. I think this syntax is wrong. Yeah, on creating, the element before it. Yeah, so we have this method. Just understand that insert before. Okay, I think I made a mistake. Let me see this syntax because we don't use this. Yeah, I'll tell you why. Okay, so again we'll reference document.body only, but then on this we will invoke insert before. On the body element also we can call the DOM methods. So there if I execute it, so I would like to give a reference of button, okay, and then I would like to say a para. Let's see if this syntax works. Insert before a node. The node before which new node is to be inserted is not a child of this node. Okay, all right. So let me keep it simple, okay, not to confuse you now. So we have got any of button. So I'll invoke a simple method, or I have a body, okay, document.body. To that, I'm going to simply use a method called append child, which is the element I would like to say para. So did we insert this new element now into the document? Yeah. Yes. Though we thought, okay, we will put this here. So let's say if I get the reference of this element and then put it, I think it will definitely come after it, right? So you see all this creation of some element at, at dynamically, not hard coded, has happened through what is called as JavaScript. And we just saw the taste of how does it look like. What does it take? How does the DOM API looks like to create some dynamic content? Agree? Yeah. So now since this is a power of JavaScript, yeah, and we know that today's website nothing is static. Do you see any static content as you serve? It's very rare that the web pages that people are consuming today are static. We don't like static content. We want things to be dynamic. We want things to be changing. Otherwise, it's a bit boring, right? It's a static content is nothing but it won't change. So this content won't change. This is a static content. But then in real worlds, when we are browsing a lot of websites, when we are actually having a lot of web applications, so the content needs to change based on login, based on browsing, based on region, based on language, and based on where you are browsing, whether you are using a mobile or a desktop browser. Again, the content will change. So for all that dynamic, yeah, content, we heavily rely on what is called as JavaScript, and that is, yeah, the another superpower of JavaScript because it has via this DOM APIs can make the content dynamic. But again, under the hood, the content which is created is of HTML. No doubt in that. This dynamic content is made of HTML only. But then the generation process, correct? The creation process happened through JavaScript. Now, yeah, so since HTML don't have that superpower, neither CSS. So we have to rely on JavaScript for such content. And that's why JavaScript is so popular today. So you see any dynamic content on any of the web page, it is through JavaScript. It is because of JavaScript. But then there is one problem with this JavaScript code that we wrote actually. So let's recall like okay, what all we did. Yeah. So we created a paragraph. How did we create? Yeah. So we created a paragraph using first thing is we created a document element para, correct? Yeah. Let me list all that we actually happened behind the scene. So let me put it as this script. Okay. So para, and then we did create paragraph. After that we created text node. After that we did we did attach. Yeah, we did put the text into the paragraph. What else? Okay, we added a class to the paragraph. What else? We then tried adding, yeah, we got the reference of this button element. Imagine like okay, that's an existing element which we want a reference. So in this case maybe I can get a reference of h2 also. So I'll say I'll use an h2 selector just to show you. What else? Then we did call button dot. Yeah, we tried using insert before, that didn't work. I think even this syntax, the method, the way to use this method didn't work. So then we used what is called as document dot body dot append child. You see, we ended up writing 6 lines of code just to add a simple paragraph and with some text, isn't it? Yeah, maybe this line is not required because directly I'm appending it to the body. Yeah, you can say 5 lines. For one line of HTML, we ended up, writing so much of JavaScript. But then today's need is dynamic content. We like to have don't like to have the lengthy JavaScript. So what is the problem with the big lines of code? What if I end up I have to create another element? For sure I'll have to repeat all this, at least these things. These 4 lines has to be repeated if I have to create another paragraph. Then the code becomes too heavy actually. If if I have too many lines of code in my code base, the biggest problem is its maintenance, which means somebody has to read and understand if there is any change, which means you are wasting the one person effort there actually. Also, so maintaining that big code base is a challenging over the time. You might have to see if this API is been removed or updated, or it has a new syntax, or if there is a new way of doing all this stuff. So in general, yes, JavaScript has this capability, but then it will actually become you know too much of tedious work to do everything with pure JavaScript. This is called vanilla JavaScript. It's a too much of a lengthy code actually. So then, so what did people came up actually? Yes, this is very good feature because I'm able to create a dynamic content. So they solved this kind of problem actually. This problem of having a lengthy code using libraries. Then people started you know creating libraries around this JavaScript, which was actually mainly there for creating a DOM element or creating a dynamic content. So libraries started evolving. Do you know any library which is around this creating this dynamic content like this, or to manipulate this dynamic content or the DOM content? Have you heard of any library? So one of the famous library which we started using is jQuery. What's the library name? It's a jQuery. It is not part of JavaScript, but it is a purely a JavaScript library for creating dynamic content. They had all these methods. Okay, part of JavaScript, I mean jQuery, you know, the syntax was very easy. So they made, okay, document dot maybe dollar append. Yeah, let's say you want a selector, so you can write something like this instead of you writing document dot query selector. Yeah, and then writing a lengthy syntax like dot button. You see how this line looks and how this line looks. Very easy readable, correct? And on this, yeah, you could have called so many other things. Yeah, you see, append, add class. Yeah, all these things they actually added. So basically, this gives me a DOM reference of the existing object. This also gives the same thing. This is using pure JavaScript way, but this is using pure library way. Now, this jQuery, I think, is almost lasted. Okay, this kind of solution was there almost, you can say, kind of a decade. How many years? A decade. Still, many of the code bases, yeah, many of the website, still relying on jQuery for this purpose. Specifically, this library, there were many other libraries for sure at that time, but then this is a one which was very popular, and people started using this library heavily for creating UI. Yeah, almost for a decade. And still, I think very few projects which are not updated, they are not able to rewrite, they are not able to move away from this dependency. They continue to use just the jQuery. jQuery library is still available. I'm not saying there is not available, but then people found, a lot of problems with, doing something with like jQuery. Why? So they said, see, if at all you are querying the DOM like this, see, it was just a replacement for the DOM APIs. Or it's like they had written a lot of built-in methods in that library, so we are supposed to use that methods. Yeah. So and then through that the syntax was made easy. But then, so what is the real problem is, okay, so the real problem is as a performance, yeah, as a performance, querying, okay, querying the elements directly from the DOM. So we did query elements from the DOM, correct? So this is considered a costly operation. Let's say I update something onto this text. Let's say update something onto this element. Now what used to happen is, you know, as a browser, it has to do, a lot of repainting actually. First of all, when you update the DOM, you are able to query and then you manipulate whether you insert or, you know, so whatever DOM operations you do, for all that, the browser has to do what is called as, rendering. Rendering the word they use, but that is, behind the scene is almost like, okay, creating this DOM object, yeah, updating this DOM object, and then on top of that, you know, painting also. Painting as per this new object, as per this updated object. And this operation, people felt it is a very costly operation. Why they felt a weak operation? Though you updated just a single element and maybe a single property, browser was supposed to do the whole of repainting. The whole page repainting is supposed to happen. The rendering, what browser has to do, the whole page it has to re-render. That's why they thought this is a very costly operation and we have to get away from this. We'll have to improve. We'll have to improve the way we, first thing is, it has a lot of boilerplate code. I have to write too many lines of code. Though I might use a short syntax like jQuery provides, I can come up with, I mean, I can just make things faster or make my code look easy, but still, I cannot add each of those, different thing. Meaning creating an element, adding some class, adding some text node. So this operation still you have to do it. Yeah, so both from a user experience point of view, yeah, the developer experience, which is nothing but developer experience. So both from the DevX point of view, also in terms of the performance point of view, this solution is called, okay, not that good. They found a newer ways to do this. They try to overcome these things with a newer solution. That's where, yeah, a framework like React actually, framework or a library like, I mean, React is actually a library. Yeah. So frameworks and libraries got evolved. Some are improved libraries evolved. Now, when I say framework, yes, so we have a very famous framework called Angular. Yeah. We also have a library called React. Yeah. We have got something like Svelte. We have got something like Vue. So the list is very big. Yeah. These many UI frameworks got evolved, and these are the popular ones. Yeah. We have got Solid.js. We have got Next.js. But these are the famous popular ones which people are using day to day. But then we have hundreds of frameworks which are actually built, okay, around UI. UI are nothing but front end frameworks got evolved actually. Why? To solve this problem. Now, what these libraries or frameworks or the modern frameworks are actually doing? So they have actually improved this process. If at all you want only div, you write, just div like this. Okay, you write as a developer, you put that, you create that element. But I will make sure to insert this element dynamically. If this is required only dynamically, let's say I want a if condition. Okay, if is admin. Okay, then only you want to add this div. Yeah, give me. Then I'll take care of this. You want to create a list. Let's say I have, a lot of list elements actually. Item 1, item 2, item 3. And you need a list. You want to create a list of all these items dynamically instead of statically, right? Okay, give me this object. I'll give you a syntax which will actually convert this into your dynamic uh, DOM content. Okay, so let's say the way we write is, yeah, so let's say item. Now all these frameworks are kind of working like this. Yeah, you give the content, you just declare what you want. Behind the scene, creating its equivalent DOM nodes and inserting efficiently into the, the browser DOM is actually taken care by using frameworks and this newer libraries which are actually built. Yes, so the reason one is the dev experience was not, to improve the dev experience, and also to improve the performance with respect to creating the dynamic content. Yes, today there are so many frameworks exist. Now one such framework that we will understand next is actually, yeah, the framework called React. It's also termed as React.js because it's a JavaScript framework. Okay, so far any questions? So how we are moving from JavaScript and why we are actually going to, you know kind of frameworks, anything around DOM. And in today's world, though these APIs are there, though we have a lot of topics to kind of we can understand, there are a lot of APIs, you see. So there is a DOM tree, meaning how to display it, walking the DOM, which is nothing but querying it, checking what is the child element, checking what is the next element, yeah, searching the element like query selector as I told you, attributes and properties, modifying the document, adding style and classes. So yes, so part of the the browser or the BOM, yeah, browser object model also we say, part of that specification, yes, we have all these things. But because of the newer frameworks that we have and they are solving the problem in a different way, we are, very less. usage of any of these DOM APIs, because the frameworks are doing behind the scene for us. So that's why even you see, I was not able to understand, like, okay, I've never used that insert before recently. I don't know when I used last time. So we don't really use these APIs heavily. Getting what I'm saying? So if at all today, if at all you're using anywhere, I mean, you're writing, creating UI, anywhere you're working on building any website, it is kind of ruled out that we don't directly work with these DOM APIs. Very less. I think we might use query selector and all, yeah, but not to modify or update and all that. But then these libraries have written the code. See, again, behind the scene, they also have to do through that same interface only. The interface is DOM. Via the DOM only, they also have to deal with it. But then how they do it, it differs framework to framework. But what they do it, yes, you declare what you want, they will create behind the scene how it is supposed to be. All right. So that is why. So we actually move on with learning React. Yeah, learning React with this. So again, in each of these frameworks, one thing is very common. We use JavaScript only. We will apply whatever the knowledge we have learned so far with respect to JavaScript plus HTML plus CSS. All the things will come into picture. All these frameworks are built out of JavaScript, which means you have to, again, if at all you're writing a code, you will have to use JavaScript in syntax. You'll have to use JavaScript array methods only. You'll have to be using JavaScript object and other syntax. And that is the reason we have learned so much of JavaScript, yeah, as a core concept. We understood, yeah, all the basic core concepts of a language. So with this said, okay, so let's move on to, you know, okay, I put together some content here, yeah. So yeah, we'll move on to what is called as React. So basically, React is a powerful and flexible library for building user interfaces. That's what I've been saying. Yeah, those who know JavaScript can quickly get started with using React. You can start writing React program. The only prerequisite is, yes, you should have a knowledge of JavaScript, also HTML and CSS. So React provides you a declarative syntax. Very easy, very easy syntax. You just, as a user or as a programmer, you specify what you want. Yeah, React takes care of updating that UI very efficiently, and also, yeah, so you don't have to write too much of code for it. The way React is done, it's actually called as component based architecture. Yeah, so in simple, what you mean by component means, so if I take a page, any page in general, there will be a lot of elements. Yeah, button, paragraph, h2, that is in terms of HTML. But as a, yeah, as an high level elements, we will have something like menu, we will have sidebar, we will have header, correct, we will have image. Yeah, so these things, what I said now, yeah, the pieces which are composed of one or more these HTML elements, we call them like components. What do we call them? We call them as components. So React supports this component based architecture. So for anything and everything in React, we start using components, we start creating components. And again, components are more reusable pieces, yeah, reusable logic to build a UI. You say if this bigger page, let's say, I mean, this is a very small page, yeah, let's say I have a big page like this. So there will be so many components which are involved, composed in making a page like this. For example, this button could be a component, the search input is a component, this logo is a component, yeah, This whole thing is actually a navbar that itself is one component. That's how we compose components, we create components such that there is more reusability is also achieved. Yeah, virtual DOM. This is this is the React's own DOM representation against the real DOM which we just spoke. Yeah, so React's own DOM representation, that's actually called virtual DOM. Since React has this virtual DOM, or via the virtual DOM, React does the efficient applying the changes, yeah, efficiently applying this necessary changes to the real DOM. Yeah, so that way your updates, whatever you see on the change, I mean see the changes on the UI is faster and also more smoother actually. Why? Because it has a concept with is there out of React itself, yeah, which is called virtual DOM, which takes care of updating the UI. Yes, so it has so many other things in simple, yeah. So it is basically a pure JavaScript library. It is not a framework. So and it provides this declarative syntax and component architecture plus a virtual DOM concept. Yeah, and yes, the another reason why React or what is so good about React is it has got a strong community and ecosystem. This React is actually a library maintained by our famous company called Meta. Yeah. So earlier it was known by name Facebook. Yeah, but yeah, and right now the company name is Meta. So that is a company which has actually created this library. So which means you can understand, yeah, it's not a small organization. Yeah, it's a very big organization which is involved, which heavily involved in making pages or making applications. You can take it like Facebook application. It could be their WhatsApp now, the Instagram. Yeah. So all the systems are actually, they are using this React as a library and they made it open source. They made it open source so that even others can also contribute and use it. And as a library, this is fully free and open source, which means anybody can use without even paying a single penny. You can do business with this. Yeah. So which means companies are they can easily take this library, they can, yeah, install it and use it to whatever extent, yeah, completely free of cost. Yeah, it has a special syntax called a JavaScript extension. Yeah. So it has a syntax called JSX. We will understand more on that. Yeah, when we start creating components. Yes, it has a state management. State is nothing but the application logic part of it. Yeah, the data part that we store. State is actually a data, not the logic. So the data that we store within the application. So we use a special term called state for it. We'll see. Wide adoption. Yes, as I said, within Meta itself, I named a few of the products. Yeah, but there are many products, yeah, many applications they use heavily React. Yeah, and that is why the job opportunities also are very high compared to any other frameworks and libraries today. React offers its own native, yeah, flavor. The native flavor is actually called React Native. If I tell you what is React Native, it's again another library which is from the Meta, the Facebook. So that is heavily used for building the mobile apps. Yeah, so they are using it for building the mobile apps. They might have listed a lot of different companies and applications which are actually using, you see. So whatever applications you see here, be it our Outlook, Teams, yeah, the Microsoft Fund, the Shopify, the Pinterest, Discard, yeah. So this is Walmart actually. So these are some of the big companies, they're using. Yeah, it's not just the company name, it is also you see the products. Yeah, Teams. I think, what is this? Like, forgot which company is this. Okay, the WordPress. So all these apps are actually in the mobile, specifically in the mobiles, are built out of React Native. Okay, so which you can understand, like, okay, most of the application which are there in your WhatsApp, I mean in your mobile today, yeah, you will find the presence of React. All right, yeah. So which means, so React is very popular. React has make our life more easy as a developer. Yeah, that is also the reason, right? It is not just because it is popular. It just didn't become popular just like that. Yeah, first thing is developer experience is very much improved. Also, it has a very powerful, DOM updates and its core capabilities to create the UI. Yeah. Along with that, we have got a strong ecosystem and a community. Yeah, community is nothing but in the open source world, or uh, if you just step out of your current job and the company, you will see, yeah, it's a lot many people using and talking about React. All right. So with this, I think we will start understanding more into React. So let me tell you the official web page where we can understand. So there is a website called react.dev. Yeah, this is their new branded website from React 18 onwards. Okay, so this is our reference. Yeah, this is our guide. Yeah, in order to learn React to the next extent. And this is again their official page. This is where if there are newer version, if there are any updates, yeah, these are all created by that meta team. Yeah, about React. So and this documents is live and updated. Okay, so it's not very old. So you will learn the latest and the greatest which is available in React, and we will actually go through these pages only. We will see all the concepts which are actually listed here one by one to understand this particular library, which is react.dev. All right, I think let me pause here for today. Yeah, so any questions before we wind it up?
What is the difference between libraries and frameworks?
Yeah, so it's so in simple world, okay, you will have more capabilities, or you will have more features which are built in part of the framework, but library will try to solve one unique problem. For example, React will try to solve the problem of just creating the UI, but then when I'm making a web page, just that piece of creating a UI is not sufficient, which means so there will be a logic of for example internationalization, which is nothing but I have to use different languages. Yeah, which means translation which is required. I need to be able to navigate from one page to other page, which is not part of creating a UI. Yeah, between the application, I mean within the application, I would like to be able to move around. Also, I spoke about like state management. So React does not provide its own state management, which is nothing but maintaining the state of the application at the client side. For example, who has logged in? Okay, when he has logged in, what is his role? So we that information is required and the client side in the browser itself. Why? Because so accordingly I have to show whether this option is visible, whether it is editable, okay, not editable, okay, what all the data he has access to. So for that we use what is called a state management, and that state management capability is not there within just the React itself. So framework will try to solve all these problems under one single umbrella, whereas library usually they are specific to or their scope to a specific functionality only. For example, now, so this is a library for creating a UI. So we have got something called React Router DOM, which is actually a library for you know handling the routing task, which means navigating from one page to other page within that application. That is taken care purely by this library called React Router DOM. And this is again a library. For state management, we have a solution. Okay, so it is in the form of what is called as Redux. Okay, and so React has given a binding for Redux. So we say React Redux. Okay, so this is again a library. Now, if your application tomorrow needs all these things, then it's up to you. You have to borrow and integrate with your existing application. If at all, you start with a library. But if you start off with a framework, yeah, you don't have to do borrow many things from outside, because the things which generally required are, the common things that are required for creating the UI. They're already built in part of your framework itself. Example, Angular. So that provides a lot of the functionalities within the Angular itself. You don't have to borrow, or you don't have to look for a third party solution or a solution outside this library. Yeah, another task I didn't talk about is unit testing. Let's say I want to write some unit testing. React does not provide any unit testing capability out of React library. But then, yeah, this team has created a library called Just, which can actually help me do a unit test. So if at all I need to do a unit test, I have to, integrate this library onto my React application. Okay, hope that is answered. Yeah. So as a next thing, we just don't learn this library React, yeah, just the React. No, we will need to understand the libraries like React Router, the React Redux, yeah, and then, yeah, like Just, which is for unit testing. So like this, we will meet a lot of library along with React, but the main library is React. Okay, any other questions?
No.
Okay, so if you're all good, I think, yeah. So let's pause it for here today, yeah, and yeah, we will start, working or creating more of React in the coming classes, yeah. So we will start doing